When I was a kid, I was wondering kind of what's the meaning of life? Like, why are we here? What's it all about? And I came to the conclusion that what really matters is trying to understand the right questions to ask. And the more that we can increase the scope and scale of human consciousness, the better we are able to ask these questions. And so I think that there's certain things that are necessary to ensure that the future is good. Some of those things are, in the long term, having long-term sustainable transport and sustainable energy generation, and to be a spacefaring civilization, and for humanity to be out there among the stars and be a multi-planetary species. I think being a multi-planet species and being out there among the stars is important for the long-term survival of humanity, and that's one reason, kind of like life insurance for life collectively, life as we know it. But then the part that I find personally most motivating is that it creates a sense of adventure, and it makes people excited about the future. And if you consider two futures, one where we are forever confined to Earth until eventually something terrible happens, or another future where we are out there on many planets, maybe even going beyond the solar system, I think that second version is incredibly exciting and inspiring, and there need to be reasons to get up in the morning. I think here's, in my mind, like the strongest argument for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following. That 40 years ago, we had Pong, like two rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. And soon we'll have virtual reality, we'll have augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality, just indistinguishable. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be, billions of such, computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
So
tell me what's wrong with that argument.
Is the answer yes?
The argument is probably. But I just like, is there a flaw in that argument?
I mean, someone.
I'm not sure what the error.
No. The argument makes sense. So the assumption then is that somebody beat us to it, and this is a game.
No. There's a 1 in billions chance that this is base reality.
Oh, okay. What do you think?
Well, I think it's 1 in billions.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean, that seems to be like clearly what it suggests.
Right.
And actually, I mean, arguably we should hope that that's true, because otherwise, if civilization stops advancing, then that may be due to some calamitous event that erases civilization. So maybe we should be hopeful that this is a simulation, because otherwise, either we're going to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality, or civilization will cease to exist. At some point, indistinguishable from reality.
Where we'll lose this. We'll lose this. Like, you and I are just looking at each other through our eyes. I see you, you see me. I hope.
You think so?
I think you probably have regular eyes.
This could be some simulation.
It could. Do you entertain that?
Well, the argument for the simulation, I think, is quite strong, because if you assume any improvement at all over time, any improvement, 1%, 0.1%, just extend the time frame, make it 1,000 years, 1 million years. The universe is 13.8 billion years old.
Civilization, if you're very generous, civilization is maybe 7 or 8,000 years old, if you count it from the first writing. This is nothing. So, if you assume any rate of improvement at all, then games will be indistinguishable from reality. Or civilization will end. One of those two things will occur. The universe as we know it will dissipate into a fine mist of cold nothingness eventually.
And then someone's going to bottle it and put a fragrance to it, sell it to French people in another dimension.
It's just a very long time. So
Yeah.
I think it's really just about how can we make it last longer.
Are you a proponent of the multi-universes theory? Do you believe that there are many, many universes, and that even if this one fades out, that there's other ones that are starting fresh right now, and there's an infinite number of them, and they're just constantly in this never-ending cycle of birth and death?
I think most likely, this is just about probability, there are many, many simulations. These simulations are, we might as well call them reality, or you could call them multiverse.
These simulations, you believe, are created? Like someone has manufactured?
They're running on a substrate.
So...
That substrate is probably boring.
Boring?
Mm-hmm.
How so?
Well, when we create a simulation, like a game or a movie, it's a distillation of what's interesting about life. You know, like it take a year to shoot an action movie, and then that's all distilled down into 2 or 3 hours. So, let me tell you, if you see an action movie being filmed, it's boring. Super boring. There's like lots of takes, everything's in a green screen. Looks pretty goofy, doesn't look cool. But once you add the CGI and have great editing, it's amazing. So, I think most likely, if we're a simulation, it's really boring outside the simulation. Because why would you make a simulation that's boring? You'd make a simulation way more interesting than base reality.
That is, if this right now is a simulation.
Yes.
And ultimately, inevitably, as long as we don't die or get hit by a meteor, we're going to create some sort of simulation if we continue on the same technological path we're on right now.
Yes.
But we might not be there yet. So it might not be a simulation here. But it most likely is, you feel, other places.
This notion of place or where is a
flawed.
Yes.
Flawed
like
perception.
Where, like
right.
that. If you have this sort of Vive, you know, which that's made by Valve and Steam and it's really Valve that made it. HTC did the hardware, but it's really a Valve thing.
Makers of Half-Life.
Yes. Valve, great company.
Great company.
When you're in that virtual reality, which is only going to get better, where are you? Where are you really?
Right.
You aren't anywhere.
Well, whereas
You're in the computer.
What defines where you are?
Exactly.
Right.
It's your perception.
Is it your perceptions, or is it a scale that we have under your butt? You're
What
right here. I've measured you. You're the same weight as you were when you left. But meanwhile, your experience is
Why do you
radically
think
different.
you're where you are right now? You might not be.
I'll spark up a joint if you keep talking. Your manager's going to come in here. We might have to lock the door.
Right now, you think you're in a studio in LA.
That's what I heard.
You might be in a computer.
Oh, listen, man. I think about this all the time.
What is life for Elon Musk?
I find as I get older, I find that question to be maybe more and more confusing or troubling or uncertain. I think particularly when you see the advancement of something like video games. Now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic, and millions of people playing simultaneously. And you see where things are going with virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you extrapolate that out into the future with any rate of progress at all, like even 0.1% or something like that, a year, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. And then it seems like, well, how do we know that that didn't happen in the past and that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
Interesting. Interesting.
I mean, could be.
Everything is possible in life.
I mean, yeah, particularly like things seem to be accelerating.
Some of the happiest seeming people, actually some of the saddest people in reality. And nobody looks good all the time, doesn't matter who you are.
No. It's not even something you should want. Why do you
Yeah.
want to look great all the time?
Yeah, exactly. So I think things like that can make people quite sad.
Well, you
just by
basically-
comparison, because you just sort of people generally could think of themselves relative to others. We are constantly re-baselining our expectations. And you can see this, say, if you watch some show like Naked and Afraid, or if you just go and try living in the woods by yourself for a while, and you'll learn that civilization is quite great. It's a lot of it. People want to come back to civilization pretty fast on Naked and Afraid.
So I think we'll see probably less physical movement in the future as a result of the virtual reality stuff. Yeah.
And when we come out of what we're here now into this virtual reality, we'll think it's real. I mean, it's like
Well, I mean, there's some interesting things here on the virtual reality front. And on the whole notion of a simulation, which is that if you extrapolate into the future and say, well, how good, let's say, will video games be in 100 or 200 or 1,000 years from now? If there's continued improvement, and you're in a full body haptic suit with a sort of surround vision, and it becomes, beyond a certain resolution, indistinguishable from reality. And there are likely to be millions, maybe billions of such simulations. So then, what are the odds that we're actually in base reality? Isn't it 1 in billions?
Is it? I mean, I can give the counter
Seems to
argument,
be.
but I'd rather you give the counter argument.
Obviously, this feels real, but it seems unlikely to be real.
It's also possible, though, that we're in a simulation.
That we're in a simulation like the Matrix?
Yeah. Well, different from the Matrix, but a simulation of sorts. Yeah.
Well, this whole world could be a dream.
It could be a dream. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it could be a simulation. I mean, have you ever played like the advanced video games and how realistic they were getting?
I know. It is like a whole nother life.
Right.
Yeah. With the goggles and everything, 3D and everything.
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
It could be that that's what we know to be Earth. Maybe we're some other creature's avatar. And there may be ways to test whether it's a simulation. There might be. I'm not saying there aren't, but you could certainly imagine that a simulation could correct that. Once an entity in the simulation found a way to detect the simulation, it could either restart, pause the simulation, start a new simulation, or do one of any other things that then corrects for that error.
Okay, going back to the AI situation, this is quite an important debate. Like if you assume any rate of advancement in AI, we will be left behind by a lot. And so then we could be in, benign, but even the benign situation, if you have if you have ultra intelligent AI, we would be, so far below them in intelligence that it would be like, a pet, basically.
Cat, that's what I was thinking.
Like a pet.
Cat,
a
like
cat,
the cat.
like a cat. It'd be
Elon
like a
the
house
cat,
cat. Yeah, it would
right.
be like the house cat.
Right.
That's not the end of the world. It's just,
Well,
sort of pet.
I've seen the movie, it could be. Yeah.
It could be. Honestly, that would be the benign scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And
So house cat is okay.
I mean, I don't love the idea of being a house cat.
Okay.
But
So
that,
what's the solution?
yeah, so I think I think it's to essentially, I think one of the solutions, the solution that seems maybe the best one, is to have an AI layer. If you think of like you've got your limbic system, your cortex, and then a digital layer, sort of a third layer above the cortex, that could work well and symbiotically with you. I mean, just as your cortex works symbiotically with your limbic system, your sort of a third digital layer could work symbiotically with the rest.
This is something that's surgically inserted or bred into the species, or what?
The fundamental limitation is input-output. So we already have, we're already a cyborg. It's just that, I mean, you have a digital version of yourself or partial version of yourself online in the form of your emails and your social media and all the things that you do. And you have basically superpowers in that with your computer and your phone and the applications that are there. You have more power than the President of the United States had 20 years ago. You can answer any question, you can video conference with anyone
Right.
anywhere, you can send a message to millions of people instantly. You know, you just do incredible things. And but the constraint is input-output. So we're I/O bound, particularly output bound. I mean, like your output level is so low. It's like, particularly on a phone, like your two thumbs are sort of tapping away. This is ridiculously slow. Our input is much better because we have a high bandwidth visual interface to the brain. Like our eyes take in a lot of data. So there's many orders of magnitude difference between input and output. So mostly, effectively merging in a symbiotic way with digital intelligence revolves around eliminating the I/O constraint. So it'd be some sort of direct cortical interface.
And you called it a neural lace?
Neural lace, yeah.
It's totally not Google Glass, right?
No, I'm talking about
No, but
something
it's
which...
like you wear it? Or you...
No, I mean, it would be... I mean, there are a few ways to approach this, but some sort of interface directly with your cortical neurons particularly.
But doesn't that imply surgical insertion?
Not necessarily. You could go through the veins and arteries because that provides a complete roadway to all of your neurons. Your neurons are very heavy users of energy, so they need high blood flow. So you automatically, with your veins and arteries, have a road network to your neurons.
Still some kind of surgery, right?
Yes, but you could insert something, you know, basically, you know, into the jugular and have. It gets macabre, but
It sounds really easy and
it doesn't involve.
risk-free.
It doesn't involve, you know, like chopping your skull off or anything like that.
good.
Yeah.
And plus, you're not a house cat anymore.